All right. What's up, guys? I've got a what's going to be probably the first in a series of videos focused on acquiring better items in PoE outside of just like buying the items off the trade site. So it's going to be a lot of crafting stuff mostly, but also probably some farming strategies and things of that nature as well. But for this one in particular, I'm going to be starting it off with harvest crafting. And specifically the harvest crafting that you can do with some of the more common, or really common even, reforge crafts that harvest gives you, outside of like the very obvious things like you can reforge with life to roll life on a body armor or roll life on your shield. But some of the less obvious stuff that still probably, many players know about, but some might not know about and might not know all of the different applications. And I mean, we won't be able to cover all of the applications in this video, but this is kind of just going to be the introductory basics to this. So, when I say the less obvious things, I'm more talking about the type of crafting where you're taking advantage of the fact that these harvest reforges guarantee one specific mod at least of the listed type. So like this reforge physical guarantees a physical mod on the item if the item can roll a physical modifier. If not, it just won't do anything, it won't work. But so one of the really straightforward obvious ones would be finding something like a ring. And if you were to take a ring and use Reforge caster mods, an uninfluenced ring with nothing else really going on, no, well, no influence, I guess. There's only one caster mod available. So really, what this reads as, or what you can read it as, is Reforge a rare ring with cast speed. Because when I click this craft, it's going to have cast speed, which isn't particularly crazy on its own, but if you are a build like looking for cast speed, it's a way to get it. And there's a handful of these, so real quick, let's pull up my good friend PoEDB, which gives a ton of information on mods that you can roll on items and the mod weights and the mod types and all that. Craft of Exile is another website that does more or less the same thing. They're both really good resources because a lot of this stuff isn't directly available in game. So I'll show you a few of the types of reforges you can do. These are going to be initially like non-influenced items, which aren't as powerful, but there are just some interesting ones that, if you needed it, like you're an SSF and you just really want a certain stat, that's where these would be more applicable to. It's like ring getting cast speed is pretty cool. If you just do a speed reforge in general on a ring, you will hit either cast speed or attack speed. However, while you can do caster on a ring to get cast speed, you can't really do attack on a ring to get attack speed because, as you can see, there is a lot of other attack mods. So that's where like the potential strength of this comes in, is finding the mods on items where like it's the only mod of its type. So as an example, gloves, if you wanted to reforge speed, the only thing you can hit is attack speed. So if you want attack speed on your gloves, you reforge speed. Or let's say a caster shield, if you reroll again speed, you'll notice a lot of these are the similar ones, because like things like fire, cold, lightning, life, defense, they're not as applicable to this, at least not on uninfluenced regular items, just because most items have mods of those by default, and usually multiple of them. It's mostly going to be stuff for uninfluenced items like caster, speed, attack, sometimes physical, sometimes chaos. As you can see, again, Speed on a caster shield will give you cast speed always. However, on this shield, caster will not always give you cast speed because there's a few other caster mods. But critical reforge on a caster shield. When I say caster shield, I mean an ES base, because it has to have ES to be able to roll this mod right here, crit for spells. Crit chance for spells is the only critical mod that you can hit on one of these shields. So if you're trying to get a crit shield, that's a way to do it. If you go to like a dexterity shield, which we've seen a bit more use in lately with some raider builds and things like that, speed on this one will guarantee you an attack speed roll, or I believe attack almost guarantees an attack speed roll, but not quite. Actually, there's quite a lot of accuracy, so attack probably wouldn't be as preferable unless you just really wanted accuracy for some reason, but the speed would do pretty well. And then beyond just gear, you can also kind of do stuff to the same effect on jewels. So this is Crimson Jewels right here. Crimson Jewels are an interesting one because you can actually, one of the few cases of being able to guarantee a specific roll on a jewel with these reforges, which is if you use a caster reforge on a Crimson Jewel, you will always hit attack and cast speed. And for some builds, attack and cast speed is really valuable. For others, it's, you know, it's just another attack speed roll or it's just another cast speed roll. But if you scroll through this, you can see there are no other caster tagged modifiers on a Crimson Jewel. So you will hit this one every single time. Or if you were to take a Cobalt Jewel and say Reforge for life, you can't guarantee a maximum life roll on it, but you do have pretty good odds because you can see there's only 3 mods you can hit. You can hit max life, you can hit minion max life, and you can hit totem life. Which if you total up all of the mod weights, which are in these red little bubbles on the side, 350, 250, 350, you're slightly over a 1 in 3 chance to hit max life, which compared to other like methods of rolling for life on jewels is pretty dang good. And if you run out of other uses for life reforges that you're finding in your harvests, it's generally a pretty good use for them. Even if like what I've done in the past is I'll use this reforge to just get jewels with % life on them that I then just like immediately Vol Orb corrupt them, trying to get like a good implicit like corrupt blood immunity or maybe reduced mana reservation, where I just want to get as many % life jewels as possible so that the jewels I'm corrupting have at least something nice on them. Now there is one other thing related to non-influence stuff specifically that is kind of limited in usefulness, but is interesting nonetheless, and I don't think a lot of people know about it. And that is if you get the Reforge normal or magic item crafts out of Harvest, which a lot of the time these just get passed by and basically tossed away because you're not carrying your items with you. You don't want to scour your items. You just want the ones that act as a Chaos Orb and just reforge instantly. But the Reforge normal or magic can actually be used on flasks. And, you know, most of the flask suffixes do have their proper tags. Now, as of recording this, next league, they are doing another change to flask mods, and this might change the viability of this, either in a good way or a bad way. We'll have to see. But if I reforge a normal or magic item with a caster mod on this flask, I believe it can either hit what it has right now, which is curse removal, which isn't that valuable because you can get it with bestiary, or it can hit cast speed during effect, which can be very desirable because rolling those otherwise can be a pain in a lot of alterations, or it can roll I think there's one other. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But you can use this. You click it, it goes. That's the other one, spell damage leached as ES, which can be useful as well, but not so much. I think the biggest use of like something like that in particular would be trying to get a cast speed during effect flask while saving your alterations and kind of taking advantage of what is otherwise probably a pretty useless harvest craft unless you're just carrying around scouring orbs with you and items to scour to use the normal or magic reforge on. But just something that's interesting. You can use them on flasks. And there can be uses, though not as much. Now, this is where things get a lot more interesting. That is with... We get rid of all of these, and we move on to... we're going to go back to rings, but this is influenced gear. Which... I don't have any in-game examples right now to show off for it, but... influences on items can add pretty commonly mod types to items that otherwise didn't have any mods of that type. So for example, on a ring, if you look for critical mods, you can see in the base pool of rings there are no critical mods. However, Shaper has a critical mod, Elder has a critical mod, Crusader has a critical mod, and Warlord has a critical mod. The two big ones here would be the Warlord one and the Elder one, which are crit multiplier. So like if you really wanted a crit multi ring, if you have an Elder or a Warlord ring, and you do Reforge critical, you are guaranteed crit multi. Possibly even stronger than that, even though it's not necessarily guaranteed, is caster Reforges on rings, which again, if you'll remember, the first thing I showed was that you can guarantee cast speed on a ring. Cast speed has a weight of 800, and there's no other caster mods until you get to influenced. Shaper has a lot of caster mods, but so they kind of dilute the pool, so we don't care too much. The two big ones in this, I would say, are probably Hunter and Warlord, but this does apply to all these other influences as well. The curse on hit effects on influenced rings are also caster mods. So on a Hunter ring, for example, if you reforge caster, you can hit either LE weakness on hit or despair on hit, or cast speed, which remember, cast speed has an 800 total weight. If your Hunter ring is item level 80 or higher, the total of all of these is also 800. So basically you have a 50% chance to hit a curse on hit. Now, if you specifically want LE weakness or you specifically want despair, it's a 1 in 4 to hit the one you want. But only 4 reforges to get your desired curse on hit is really, really strong. And then same with Warlord for flammability or vulnerability. And you can do it for the other ones, like Redeemer, you can do it for Frostbite. Crusader, you can do it, but Crusader has some other caster mods. But even that can work pretty well for you. Because maybe you want spell damage, maybe you want life on hit with spells. This does increase your chance of hitting them compared to just spamming the item with like Scour Alex or Chaos or something like that. So rings are really strong for it, specifically for the curse on hit. Another one that's pretty popular and can be really powerful is amulets. I would say probably most notably, amulets on their own have just about, if not I think every mod type by default. Like you can see caster, you can see speed, you can see attack, you can see critical even. But one thing in particular that's pretty powerful about them, and this carries over to other items as well, is chaos modifiers. Pretty much everything that's not a weapon or a shield, in their uninfluenced mod pools, the only chaos modifier is chaos res. And chaos res by default is actually pretty rare. You can see the total weight of every tier of chaos res combined is 1500, whereas fire, cold, or lightning are 8000. So it's already pretty rare. So if you combine that with, say, a hunter amulet, where a lot of people want things like chaos damage over time multiplier, or +1 chaos gems, or both, let's say if you take +1 chaos and chaos damage over time and you combine their total weights, it's a total of 1250. Whereas chaos res is 1500, and the other extra mod on Hunter, which is leeched as chaos, is 5000. So the total weight there would be 3250 of chaos. And the mods you want are 1250, which is just over a 1 in 3 chance again of hitting either chaos multi or +1 chaos, which is a really good way to get like a particularly tough to get stat usually early on, especially in like solo self-found or very early in a league. For chaos dot builds, it's really good because it's just hard to get that stat usually early on. And there's some other things that you can do, like trying to fish for physical reforges on amulets, but there is quite a bit of default physical rolls. Fizz to attacks, fizz leech, but if you wanted like fizz as elemental, you can. It's not as powerful, but it is an option as well. Another really big one is boots. Specifically, boots with a crit reforge. Redeemer boots, you can get elusive on critical strike, which has the critical tag, and nothing else has the critical tag. So if you have Redeemer boots, item level 75 or higher, and you use a crit reforge, you are guaranteed elusive on crit. And the fact that you're straight up guaranteed it can open up like the option of just using a bunch of them as you find them until you hit like a good life roll or a good movement speed roll along with the elusive to actually kind of round out the prefixes entirely. But that one's really good. Another thing that's interesting about that one is a lot of people will get hunter boots to combine with it. This mod here used to also have the crit tag, but they removed it, which is a little bit weird. But the tailwind, if you've dealt a crit recently, people will commonly awaken or orb this tailwind in this elusive mod. But if you do that and then like the awaken orb just hits a whole bunch of garbage, it like bricks your item essentially, you can actually get back to where you were for cheaper than it would be to get another Awakener's Orb if you were to just roll for Tailwind with like alt spamming and then lock suffixes on the item so that you can't lose the Tailwind, and again do a Reforge crit, because that's another thing about these Reforges. They respect modifiers like prefixes cannot be changed and suffixes can't be changed, which that's probably a whole video on its own, going into all the things you can do with that. But so in that case, you would be spending the like 2 exalts to lock the suffixes plus the cost to roll the Tailwind, instead of buying a whole nother Awakener's Orb, which I don't know exactly how much they cost generally on softcore trade, but in hardcore trade, you're going to save yourself a lot of currency if you do it that way, spending the 2x, where Awakener's Orbs can, depending on the league, go anywhere from like 5 to 10 exalts in price. So there is other options like that, which are really cool. And then finally, for just kind of regular influence gear stuff, there's body armors, which have a few big ones. I would say the 2 primary ones are related to crit reforges with, you can see, I mean, it goes across actually most of them since there's shared on a few of these. Shaper chest, if you reforge crit, you're guaranteed crit to spells. Elder, guaranteed crit to attacks. And then Hunter also has both of these, the crit to attacks and crit to spells, so you'll hit one of them, but you're not guaranteed either one in particular. However, another interesting thing that you can do with Hunter is Reforge Caster, which again, body armor is by default, no caster mods. Hunter has this spell crit one, but the one you would be going for here usually is additional curse, which you end up with a basically a 1 in 3 chance to hit +1 curse if your Hunter chest is I-82 or higher. Or actually, if your chest is I-82 or I-83 specifically, it's a 50-50 chance, because the second tier of spell crit doesn't unlock until item level 84. But that one's a really good one. Alternatively, people sometimes will use physical reforges. Physical reforges aren't like as useful overall usually in this type of crafting, because most items just have at least 1 or 2 standard fizz things like reflect fizz garbage mod that kind of get in the way. But reforge fizz harvests are like really common, so you just end up with a lot of them, and unless you're making like a fizz weapon, there's not a ton else to do with them. So sometimes you can use these to fish for like physical taken as elemental or physical taken as chaos, with a pretty decent chance. Like for Hunter, fizz taken as chaos with a fizz reforge, you have the 1,000 weight versus the 4,000, so it's a 1 in 5 chance. It's pretty good, not amazing, but if you have nothing else to do with those crafts, you know, it's there, it's an option. And that, I believe, more or less wraps up that. There is one other particular use for these harvest reforges, and this one actually does apply to some of the less useful ones from what I just showed. This can apply to the things like the fire reforge and the cold reforges even, and that is using these harvest reforges to craft cluster jewels. And I would say that using them to craft cluster jewels in certain cases is even stronger than like influence gear. But that is also like a big enough subject that it's probably worth its own video, going over all of the things you can do there as well, because like you can craft just about every type of cluster jewel with some amount of good mods, and it's a really common way that people use the harvest crafting for profit in Trade League is using the reforges for cluster jewel crafting. So that's a whole thing for its own video, and that's all I got for this one. Hopefully it was helpful. Hopefully you learned something. And yeah, I've got some ideas of other crafting things to kind of go over like this, and some farming ones as well. But if you have any suggestions of like interesting crafting interactions that you think are worth talking about, or maybe just even types of items that you would like to know how to craft that you don't know how to craft, feel free to leave them in the comments, I guess, and I will look over those and may or may not add them to my list of other things that I can kind of cover like this. Okay, thanks everybody for watching. See ya.